Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Let's talk about the tribal mind. Us versus them. This polarization that we seem to find in our society. Right versus left. Christian versus Muslim. Muslim versus Jew. Black versus white. Black versus Latino. That's something that a lot of you motherfuckers don't know about. The whole time you're sitting here talking about race war between the whites and the blacks. I remember sitting down in the barrio in California, seeing an actual race war. Not some fantasy race war that motherfuckers think about on TV, an actual race war between blacks and Latinos. Motherfuckers would go hunting. Just drive around with your homies and a bunch of guns, looking for somebody of the other color. When you find them, you kill them. On New Year's Eve or 4th of July, any one of those holidays which calls for fireworks, motherfuckers would go out, shoot off their pistols towards the opposite neighborhood with this dumb fantasy, hoping that those bullets would crash down and shoot anybody. What if it hits a kid? Good, fuck that kid. What if it hits an old lady? Fuck that side of town. I know what it's like to be so tribal, where you hate, despise another side of town. And it's one thing when gangs are different races, and we can get into this whole socio-political, cultural dynamic of competing for space and, you know, whatever. But I used to see it between Norteño and Sureño. These motherfuckers are the same. I know they hate hearing that. They're the same. The only difference is the red or the blue bandana they wear. They're both Mexicans. They kill each other over streets they don't even own, over turf that doesn't even belong to them. They don't even own the houses they live in. They rent apartments. They're fighting over turf that somebody else owns. Fighting people that look just like them because of a tribal mindset, because of this us against them. And I remember my dad used to get involved with this type of thing because my dad was involved in a gang. He was a professional criminal, lifelong criminal. My grandfather was the same. I come from a family of that kind of shit. My dad would try to indoctrinate me. I was probably 17, 18 years old, and my dad would drive me around as he would do his business, and he would literally just do all the talking. I would sit there and keep my mouth shut, and he would go on and on and on all day long about the enemy, about why they're terrible, all these various reasons to trick me, to brainwash me, to convince me, manipulate me into hating them like he hated them. These people had never done anything to me. I'd seen the so-called enemy before, and you know what? They look exactly, they dress exactly like my dad and his buddies dress. They look like they could join their crew tomorrow and you wouldn't be able to tell any of them apart. They talk alike, they eat the same type of food, they drink the same type of beer, they listen to the same type of music. They're born in similar years, they have similar lifetime experiences, come from similar families, may even have grown up on the same block or in the same side of town. And somehow, he was hell-bent, my father was dedicated to hating the enemy as if they were evil, they were demons, they were a different breed. And I would laugh, I'd tell them, they look just like you, they are you. You guys are all the same. He couldn't even understand when I would say that. He had no idea what I was talking about when I would make those comments, because he wasn't seeing it that way. This tribal mindset of us against them really makes you wonder, I mean, who is the enemy? Who's the enemy? Who is your enemy? People seem to have these fantasies of enemies. You watch the news enough, you get brainwashed into a tribal mindset of us versus them in various ways, and right versus left, and anything left is the enemy. Our founding fathers set up this country not for a competition to the end, which would be a tyranny of the majority. They didn't set this country up, this democracy up, in order to create a tyranny of the majority, which is one side, one party, taking over, kind of like what Mubarak did in Egypt. There were technically two parties in Egypt or more, but Mubarak would go and burn down their headquarters and arrest any opposition people. He would say on camera and to the public, to the world, we're a democracy. Anybody could run for president if they want. Go ahead, challenge me. And he'd send his people over to your house and take your family away. That's not what our founding fathers wanted to create. A tyranny of the majority. A competition to the end to see which side wins. That's not what we created. They didn't create a polarized society and us against them society. Left and right, Democrats, Republicans, whatever you want to call them. They both have their role. Liberals and conservatives are two different types of people, two different sides of a single coin. We could stop fighting tomorrow, today. There could be no more polarization. It doesn't mean we would all come together and join the same party. You could still be a liberal. I could still be a conservative, or whatever you want to call yourself. If we understood our roles, if we understood what we were good at, if we stopped trying to play outside our lane. For example, liberals, the mindset of a liberal, you can look into this, and there's lots of material on this and psychological studies that have been done on the different motivations between a liberal and a conservative and what drives them, what their motivational drives are, and why they're different. Why do Democrats and Republicans hate each other so much these days? This has been studied by lots of people. And the reason is simple, because people have different psychological makeups, and when you fall into a certain psychological makeup, you have a greater tendency to be either conservative or liberal. Liberals are much better, and this has been studied, much better at compassion. So when we have various sorts of social outreach programs, whether it be welfare or whatever, those are liberal programs, and liberals should run those programs. However, conservatives have been, and this has been studied, have been known, because of the way that their mind works, to be better at, say, for example, law enforcement. So it would be to our benefit to have conservatives be in the leadership positions within law enforcement, because that way our Justice Department would be able to operate and punish people accordingly, instead of letting them go. Right? Understanding, our founding fathers understood these differences and tried to create a society where both parties could live within the same fishbowl, and as long as we all did our own part and flourished in what we were good at, stayed within our lane, this whole place works great. You have to ask yourself, do you want unity? And if you want unity, you have to realize that we have more in common than what separates us. We have more things in common than the things that separate us. Just like with these gangs, my dad would focus on a couple differences, overlooking the hundreds of similarities. There's some people that they just don't want unity. They want to fight. I guess they just get off on it. They want to see the world burn. Some men just want to watch the world burn. You got to wonder, where does that come from? Where does this fuck everyone mentality come from? I don't believe other people are our enemies. There's people that trespass upon you. There's people that can try to harm you, and you have your duty to protect yourself against them. But But even the man that tries to harm you isn't necessarily your enemy. I mean, enemy is just a word, we just get into semantics. If somebody broke into my house while I was making this video, the last 2 minutes of this video would be you guys watching me kill somebody. I wouldn't care who it would be. But you have a duty to protect yourself. I've had enemies. I may still have enemies out there right now. But are they really enemies? Disagreements, competitions. None of it needs to lead to death or to another person's harm or to you seeking out some sort of revenge because that's what enemies are, right? If someone just hates on you and they don't like you, that's not really an enemy because you don't have to interact with them. There's lots of people that don't like me. If I went around calling every person that didn't like me an enemy, shit, that'd be a lot of people. I think when we start to philosophize on what an enemy is, the whole idea falls apart. Especially if you come at the conversation with a loving mind of rationality, right? Where you kind of understand that we're all humans doing what we have to do, what we think is right. The enemy, the true enemy, is yourself, is your own weakness, your own delusion. The true enemy is within. The enemy is your fear. The enemy is your negativity, your closed-mindedness. The solution to all this, and I'll end the video here because I like to give solutions. The solution to all this is love. The way to kill your enemies is through love. Was it Lincoln that said, "Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friend?" The way to get rid of enemies is through courage, trust. The way to get rid of enemies and this tribal mindset of us against them is through truth. It's all food for thought. Thanks for watching.